"Do you dare defy me, maid?" said the prince, but she already knew his darkest secret. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. England, 1784. Morning light poured through the long windows of Wycliffe Palace, catching on the marble floor and the edges of silver trays. Servants hurried about like soft shadows, careful not to draw attention. Among them was Clara Harrow, a young maid whose hands were rough from years of polishing, scrubbing, and mending the luxury of others. She moved quietly, her head bowed as she worked the mirrors of the East Gallery, cloth in hand, heartbeat steady. A hush spread down the corridor before she even heard the sound of boots. Every servant instantly turned away, eyes fixed on the floor. The air itself seemed to tighten, for the prince was coming. Prince Adrian of Wycliffe, second son of the crown, proud, admired, and feared. His presence was enough to still any whisper, to freeze a motion halfway done. Clara's fingers trembled around her cloth. She had never been this close to him before. The doors opened with ceremony, and he entered, tall, straight, his uniform gleaming with gold thread. A trail of courtiers followed, laughing softly at something he had said. Clara's breath caught, and for a moment she forgot to move. The glass before her was half polished, her reflection faint. She only meant to turn aside, but the motion came too late. In the mirror, her gaze met his. For a single heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. His eyes, grey as winter sky, locked on hers. She froze. There was no time to lower her head, no moment to flee. The silence in the gallery became unbearable. One of the courtiers noticed and whispered something with a laugh, but Adrian didn't laugh. He stepped forward, slowly, like a man not quite believing what he had seen. "Do you dare defy me, maid?" His voice was quiet but sharp, every word precise. Clara's throat closed. "Your Highness," she whispered, curtsying so fast her knees nearly touched the floor. "Forgive me, I meant no—" "Look at me," he said. The order made her tremble. No servant was ever told to meet a prince's gaze. Yet she obeyed, perhaps because fear and pride had tangled too tightly inside her. When her eyes lifted again, he studied her as if she were a puzzle that refused to yield. "What is your name?" "Clara Harrow, Your Highness." "Harrow," he repeated it, testing the sound. "I shall remember it." The courtiers exchanged amused glances. Someone coughed behind him, trying not to laugh. Adrian turned sharply. "Is there something amusing, Lord Bexley?" "No, Your Highness," came the murmured reply. The prince faced her again. "You know the rule, do you not? A servant of this house does not meet the eyes of a royal." "Yes, Your Highness." "And yet you did." Her voice steadied. "It was not defiance, my lord, only an accident." "An accident," he repeated. "Then you must learn caution." He turned to the steward standing near the door. "Lord Whitmore, remove this girl from the upper service. She will assist in the scullery from now on. Let her remember that accidents have costlier prices in finer rooms." Whitmore bowed, though his eyes flickered with unease. "As you command, Your Highness." Clara rose from her curtsy, pale but silent. She wanted to speak, to plead, but something in her heart, some quiet pride, held her still. Adrian watched her go, expecting tears, perhaps an apology, but she gave neither. She walked past him with her head high, her face unreadable. And that, more than her defiance, unsettled him. Later that day, as the palace sank into its usual rhythm, Adrian found himself distracted. At dinner, Lady Rosalind spoke of hunting parties and the opera, but her words blurred together. His mind returned to the look in that maid's eyes. Not insolence exactly, something fiercer, quieter, a look that said she feared nothing. It stirred in him something unwelcome, something that felt dangerously like curiosity. He rose from the table before dessert, claiming fatigue. In truth, he walked the corridors, retracing his morning steps until he stood again before the mirror she had polished. The glass was flawless, but all he saw was the reflection of that moment. In the servants' quarters below, Clara worked beside the scullery maids, her sleeves rolled, her hands raw from soap. Every so often someone whispered, That's her, the one who looked at him. Some laughed in disbelief, others in fear. She ignored them all. Shame burned in her chest, but deeper still was another feeling. Strangely steady, quietly proud. "Clara," murmured Annie, the kitchen girl, glancing toward the stairwell. "They say he's still talking about you." Clara smiled faintly. "Then he must have very little to think about." Annie gasped. "Don't say that. If anyone hears—" "No one will," Clara said. "I'm only a maid now, invisible again." But that night, when the others slept, she sat alone by the dim fire and opened the small silver locket she always wore. Inside lay a folded letter, worn by time. Her mother's handwriting curled across the page, and the seal, a faded royal crest, was still faintly visible. She traced it with her finger, whispering, "Not yet." Then she closed it again and hid it under her gown. Upstairs, Adrian's mother, Duchess Beatrice, received a report from Lord Whitmore. "The girl has been reassigned, Your Grace. She has caused no further trouble." Her name, Clara Harrow. The Duchess frowned. "Harrow. I do not recall that family. She is a servant of humble birth, I believe." Beatrice waved a hand. "Then see that she remains humble. My son's attention must not linger on the help. These palace girls forget their place the moment a prince glances their way." "Yes, Your Grace." But Whitmore hesitated, and Beatrice caught the pause. "What is it?" "Nothing, madam," he said quickly, though something in his tone betrayed him. That same night, the prince could not sleep. He paced before his window, the fire throwing restless shadows across the walls. "Why should it matter?" he muttered. "She's a maid, a servant, no different from hundreds of others." Yet the memory of her gaze would not leave him. He could still hear her quiet voice, trembling, but unbroken. "It was not defiance, my lord. Only an accident." He had spent years surrounded by people who spoke only to please him, eyes lowered in practiced reverence. But that girl, she had not flattered, not begged, she had looked. It was absurd that such a thing could trouble him, yet it did. By dawn, the palace awoke again to routine. Clara was assigned to carry linens to the upper floors. As she climbed the narrow servants' stair, she caught sight of 2 footmen whispering by the landing. "She's the one," one said. The prince spoke to her. "She's lucky to have kept her position." "Lucky? To be scrubbing floors?" "No, friend. He's watching her now. You'll see." Clara passed them without a word. The whispers followed her like shadows, but she refused to let them touch her heart. Still, when she stepped into the quiet of the linen room, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Her pride was her only armor, and it was growing heavy to bear. That afternoon, a messenger came for her, summoned to the steward's office. Her stomach tightened. Whitmore greeted her kindly enough. "Miss Harrow," he said, gesturing to a chair, "the prince has requested your presence tomorrow evening. You are to serve at his private dinner. Do not speak unless spoken to, and remember, he can be particular." She stared at him. "His private dinner? I thought I was forbidden from the upper halls." "The prince insists," Whitmore replied, his tone careful. "Take care, child. The court is not kind to those who draw notice." When she returned to the servants' quarters, the news had already spread. The kitchen girls watched her with awe and pity. "You'll not last a day," Annie said softly. "The nobles will tear you apart." "Then let them try," Clara murmured. "I've nothing left for them to take." That night she lay awake, listening to the wind beat against the shutters. Every memory of her mother returned. The calm voice, the whispered warnings. The night she had pressed the locket into Clara's hand. "This holds the truth," her mother had said. "One day, you may need it." Clara had never dared to open it before today. But now, alone in the darkness, she wondered whether fate was moving faster than she wished. The next evening, the palace blazed with candlelight. Music drifted through the corridors as nobles assembled in the grand hall. Clara, dressed in her plain uniform, carried a silver tray into the dining room. The prince sat at the head of the table, surrounded by elegant laughter and crystal glasses. His eyes found her instantly. She bowed, careful to keep her gaze lowered. He said nothing, but she felt the weight of his attention. Each time she refilled a cup or placed a dish, she could sense him watching. The courtiers whispered behind fans, amused by the tension they could not name. When the meal ended, Adrian stood. "You may all go," he said. The guests rose, murmuring farewells. As the door closed behind them, only he and Clara remained. She stood still, hands clasped before her. "Come here," he said. She obeyed, though her pulse raced. He studied her face in silence. "You are not afraid of me," he said at last. "I am, Your Highness. You don't sound it. I've learned to hide it." His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "You think me cruel. I think you powerful. And that offends you?" "No, my lord. It only reminds me how easily power is misused." He stepped closer. "You speak boldly for a maid." "Because truth, my lord, is not forbidden speech." For a moment, neither moved. The fire crackled softly between them. Adrian felt something shift inside him, a feeling both dangerous and unfamiliar. "You will serve here again tomorrow," he said finally. "I wish to learn whether your courage is as constant as your tongue." Clara bowed. "As you command, my lord." When she left, his heart beat strangely fast. He turned back toward the fire, trying to understand the unease that now filled him. Below stairs, Clara slipped into her cot, exhaustion pressing at her eyes. She should have felt fear, yet what she felt was sharper, something like destiny tightening its threads. She drew out her locket again, her fingers trembling. For years, she had carried it as memory. Now, it felt like warning. As she opened it, the folded paper shifted, revealing the faint impression of a royal seal, the same crest that marked the prince's family. Her breath caught. The candle beside her flickered as she whispered to the shadows, "If he ever learns what's written here, his name will fall with it." The next evening, Clara stood in the servants' passage outside the prince's dining chamber. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. From behind the door came the sound of laughter, clinking glass, and the low murmur of noble voices. She had promised herself she would not falter. Yet as she lifted the tray, she thought of the locket hidden beneath her gown and the words sealed inside, the secret that had haunted her since childhood. When the steward nodded, she entered. The light from 100 candles shimmered off gold and crystal. Prince Adrian sat at the center, his expression unreadable. The moment he saw her, the noise around him softened, as though the air itself waited. She moved forward, quiet and precise, placing the first dish before him. "Ah, the fearless maid returns," said Lord Bexley, a smug smile twisting his mouth. "Has your highness tamed her yet?" Adrian's eyes flicked to him. "Careful, Bexley. I keep my own company well enough." The courtiers laughed uneasily. Clara said nothing, lowering her gaze as she poured wine. The prince's voice cut through the murmurs. "Tell me, Miss Harrow, do you always meet danger so calmly?" She froze. "I have known little safety to compare it with, my lord." A few nobles exchanged glances. One lady hid her smile behind a jeweled fan. Adrian's eyes lingered on Clara a moment longer than courtesy allowed. Then he leaned back, his tone deliberately light. "Then you must find the palace a comfort. A beautiful one," she said softly. "But beauty can silence truth, your highness." The table stilled. For a breath, no one dared move. Then Adrian laughed. A short, unexpected sound. "You are bold indeed." He dismissed her with a wave. "Continue your work." For the rest of the meal, she felt his gaze follow her. Every movement seemed to draw him nearer to something he did not understand in himself. By the time the final course was cleared, his courtiers were restless, eager to escape the tension none of them could name. When the others had gone, Adrian remained. "Stay," he said quietly as she moved to leave. She turned. "Your Highness?" He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit." "I cannot, my lord." "Then stand. But speak." He rose, pacing slowly around the table. "Tell me what makes you so calm when others tremble." Her voice was low. "Fear does not change what must be done. I have learned that." He stopped beside her. "You think I am cruel, don't you?" She looked at him then, not as a servant, but as a woman seeing a man behind his title. "I think you are proud," she said, "and I think pride hides pain." He drew in a sharp breath, caught off guard. You know nothing of me. Perhaps, she said, but I know what loneliness looks like. He studied her face, the steady light in her eyes. For a moment, he forgot who he was. Go, he said finally, his voice unsteady. Before I forget who you are. She curtsied and left without another word. That night, the palace hummed with whispers. The maid who had once met the prince's gaze was now dining in his presence. Servants traded stories in corners. Some said she had bewitched him, others that she would soon be dismissed in disgrace. Clara kept to her work, saying nothing. But when she passed Lord Whitmore in the corridor, he stopped her. "Miss Harrow," he said in a low tone, "you tread dangerous ground." "I have no wish for danger, sir." "Then avoid his notice. It is not a kindness he offers." "I did not seek it." Whitmore hesitated, glancing around before speaking again. "That locket you wear. Where did you get it?" Her hand instinctively rose to her throat. "It was my mother's," he frowned. "If the prince ever sees what lies within, none of us will be safe. Do you understand?" She stiffened. "How do you know of it?" His face hardened. "Because I was there, years ago, when that seal was first broken." Before she could question him further, footsteps echoed down the hall. He stepped back, bowing slightly, his voice calm again. "Good evening, Miss Harrow. Forget what I said." Then he turned away, leaving her with a chill that sank deep into her bones. Over the following days, Adrian's mood grew restless. He ordered new banquets, new entertainments, all thin excuses to bring Clara into his orbit. When he spoke to her, it was often with irony, sometimes with anger, but always with a tension that unsettled them both. One afternoon he found her in the gallery arranging flowers. "Do you enjoy disobeying me?" he asked. She didn't look up. "No, my lord. Yet you keep doing it." "I only do what is right." He stepped closer. "And who decides what is right?" "Conscience," she said. "Conscience?" He almost laughed. "That's a luxury few can afford." "Then I pity the rich," she replied quietly. For the first time, he had no answer. She left him standing there, his reflection staring back at him from the same mirror where their story had begun. That evening, Duchess Beatrice noticed her son's distraction. She sat beside him during supper, her voice cool. "Your mind is elsewhere, Adrian. The court sees it. Rosalind sees it. It must stop." He looked up sharply. "You speak as if I am a child." "I speak as your mother," she said, "and I will not have the reputation of this family tainted by a servant's foolishness." His jaw tightened. "No one commands my heart, mother." "Then command it yourself," she replied, her tone sharp as glass. "Or I shall do it for you." The warning lingered long after she left the room. Downstairs, Clara sat by the fire, mending torn linens. Annie joined her, whispering, "They say the Duchess asked for your name." Clara's hand stilled. "Did she? She doesn't take kindly to girls who catch her son's eye. You should keep your distance." "I try," Clara murmured. "He doesn't let me." Annie shivered. "Then pray he tires of you before she notices." But Beatrice had already noticed. The next morning, she summoned Lord Whitmore to her chambers. "You will find out everything about this maid," she said. "Her family, her history, her secrets. I want her gone before she becomes a scandal." Whitmore bowed. "Yes, Your Grace." Afterward, he walked the long corridor toward the servants' wing, his expression grim. He found Clara near the kitchens carrying linens. "Come to my office after dusk," he said quietly. "There are things you must know." She hesitated, but nodded. When night fell, she entered his office, where a single lamp burned low. "You said you knew my locket," she began. "Tell me how." Whitmore closed the door. "Because your mother once served here. Lady Eleanor Harrow. She was no common maid." "My mother?" Her voice trembled. "You knew her?" "I did," he said softly. "She came to Wycliffe 20 years ago with a letter that could have destroyed the crown. The king, Adrian's father, made sure she disappeared quietly. I was sworn to silence, but when I saw your locket..." Clara's breath quickened. "You mean this letter?" She drew it out, holding it protectively. He nodded. "That very one. It bears the seal of His Majesty. If opened, it would prove that the crown stole the Harrow estate and named your family traitors to cover it." She clutched it tightly. My mother told me it was dangerous. More than you know, he said. Keep it hidden. If the Duchess learns you have it, she'll destroy you, and anyone who protects you. Before Clara could answer, there was a knock. Whitmore's face went pale. Go, quickly! She slipped through the side door and vanished into the corridor. Through the thin wall, she heard the Duchess's voice. Lord Whitmore, have you found what I asked? I am still inquiring, Your Grace. See that you hurry, Beatrice said. I want no more secrets in this palace. When Clara returned to her quarters, she pressed the locket to her chest, whispering, Mother, what have you left me? The next morning, Adrian was waiting in the gallery. You avoided me yesterday, he said as she passed. I had duties below, my lord. He studied her face. You're lying. I would not dare. You would, he said quietly. You already have. She met his gaze for a fleeting moment. What is it you wish from me, my lord? To confess fear? To beg forgiveness for an accident? He stepped closer. No. I want to understand why you haunt me. Her breath caught. You are a prince, my lord. You have no need to understand a maid. Perhaps that is what troubles me, he murmured. Their silence stretched, heavy with words neither dared speak. Then footsteps echoed down the hall. Clara curtsied and slipped away before he could stop her. That night, the palace prepared for another gathering. Clara served among the candles and laughter once more, though her thoughts were far from the glittering crowd. She noticed Duchess Beatrice watching her from across the room, her eyes sharp, her smile cold. When the dinner ended, Adrian dismissed his guests and turned to Clara. Come to the library, he said. There's something I must ask. She hesitated. My lord, the hour is late. Then it's late for truth as well. He led her through the quiet halls, stopping before a great oak door. Inside, the fire was low, the room dim. Shelves of leather-bound books rose around them like walls of silence. I was told you carry a locket, he said. What does it hold? She froze. Who told you that? No one, he said quickly. I only noticed you touch it often. Her hand went to her throat instinctively. It is all I have left of my mother. He stepped closer. May I see it? No, she said softly. It is not for you, he frowned. You defy me again. I protect what is mine. The tension between them deepened, sharp and fragile. Then from the corridor, a voice called his name. It was his mother. Adrian straightened, the spell broken. You should go, he said quietly. She nodded and slipped out, heart pounding. As she walked back through the servants' passage, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Whitmore. His face was grave. Clara, he whispered, listen to me. Burn that letter. Destroy it before anyone sees it. If the Duchess suspects you still have it, she will... He stopped abruptly, his eyes darting to the stairway. Clara turned and froze. Duchess Beatrice stood there, her expression smooth and cold. So, she said softly, the maid knows everything. The corridor was silent except for the faint hiss of the torches. Duchess Beatrice's voice carried no anger, only calm precision. You have something that belongs to this crown, she said. Give it to me. Clara's fingers tightened around the locket beneath her collar. I don't understand, Your Grace. You understand perfectly. Beatrice stepped forward, her eyes sharp. A letter sealed with a royal crest. Your mother kept it. You kept it. It was never yours to hold. Lord Whitmore's voice was low. Your Grace, if I may. You may not. She cut him off. I will not have treason hidden under my roof. Clara's heart pounded. Treason. Lies, Beatrice said smoothly. Your mother spread them once, and now you continue her folly. Give me the letter. I cannot, Clara whispered. It is all that remains of her. Beatrice's tone hardened. Then you will regret your loyalty. She turned to Whitmore. Confine this girl to the servants' quarters until I decide what is to be done. Whitmore hesitated. Your Grace, she has done no harm. The Duchess's gaze was icy. You will do as I command. Clara lifted her chin. If Your Grace fears the truth, perhaps the letter says more than you wish it to. The Duchess's lips curved into a cold smile. Careful, child. The truth can destroy more than lies ever could. She turned sharply and swept away down the hall. Whitmore waited until her footsteps faded before he spoke. "You must hide it elsewhere," he said quickly. "Tonight. Where can I go?" "Anywhere but here." He reached into his coat and handed her a small key. "The chapel by the stables. There is an old chest near the altar. Lock it inside." "Thank you," she said softly. "I do this for your mother," he murmured. "Not for you. She once trusted me to protect what she could not." That night, rain lashed against the windows as Clara slipped from the servants' wing. The corridors were empty, the palace asleep. She carried a small lantern, its flame trembling with her every step. When she reached the chapel, she knelt before the worn chest, placed the letter inside, and locked it. For a moment, she rested her hand on the wood. "Be safe," she whispered. She did not hear the door open behind her. "You should not be here." She turned, startled. Prince Adrian stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat. "My lord, I followed you," he said quietly. "My mother said strange things this evening. About secrets. About you. Tell me what she wants from you." Clara's voice shook. "You should not involve yourself, my lord. This is not your burden. It concerns my family. That makes it mine." She hesitated. "If I tell you, will you believe me?" "I will listen," he said. "The letter in this chest bears the royal seal," she began. "It was written by your father. It confesses that the Harrow lands were taken unjustly, that my family was branded traitorous to conceal his greed. My mother kept that letter to protect me. She died for it. And now your mother would see it buried again." Adrian's face drained of color. "That cannot be true. Read it, my lord. Then decide." He stepped past her and opened the chest. When he unfolded the letter, the candlelight trembled across his hands. He read in silence, his eyes darkening with every line. At last he looked up. "My father wrote this." "Yes." He closed the paper slowly, his voice unsteady. "My mother knew. I believe she did." He stared at the flames on the altar. "All my life she spoke of honor, of duty. And yet she built it on theft." Clara's tone was gentle. "Sometimes people bury their sins so deeply they forget where they hid them." He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "And now you hold the proof of our shame. I never wished to use it. Then why keep it? Because truth is all I have, my lord. Without it, I am nothing." He looked at her, seeing her not as a servant but as a woman carrying a weight his title had never known. "You risked everything to guard this," he said. "Even your life. It was my mother's promise. I could not break it." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain beat against the glass like a heartbeat. Adrian finally said, "If my mother discovers this, she will destroy you. She already means to. Then I must protect you." "You cannot," she said. "You are her son." "Then I will be something else," he answered. "A man who owes you the truth." She shook her head. "You owe me nothing. You owe it to yourself to decide what kind of man you wish to be." Their eyes met. His filled with conflict, hers with quiet strength. Then footsteps echoed from the courtyard beyond. Adrian turned toward the sound. "Go, quickly," he said. "They must not see you here." She hesitated. "What will you do?" "Whatever honor demands," he said softly. She ran through the rain back toward the servants' wing, her heart racing. Behind her, Adrian remained in the chapel, staring at the letter that had shattered everything he believed about his family. By morning, the palace was buzzing. Servants whispered that the Duchess was furious, that something had been stolen. Guards were posted near the chapel. Clara worked in silence, waiting for the storm to reach her. It came at midday. 2 attendants appeared at the kitchen door. "The Duchess commands your presence." Clara followed them to the grand hall, where Beatrice stood by the window, her hands clasped tightly. "Where is it?" she asked without preamble. "Where is what, Your Grace?" "The letter. Do not pretend. I know you took it." "I took nothing," Clara said calmly. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "My son was seen near the chapel last night. Do you imagine I believe in coincidences? You have poisoned his mind with lies." "Your Grace," Clara said softly, "I told him only what your husband wrote." Beatrice's composure cracked. "You think you can ruin me with old words on a page? You are a servant. You are nothing. Clara's reply was steady. Then why are you afraid of me? The Duchess's breath caught. For the first time, she had no answer. She turned to the guards. Confine her in her quarters. She is not to leave until I decide her fate. The guards moved forward. But before they could take her, a voice rang through the hall. Release her! Adrian stood in the doorway. His expression was calm, his tone cold. There will be no punishment. The letter was my father's, not hers. Its contents are true. Beatrice froze. Adrian, you will not speak of this madness before others. I will speak it before the whole court if I must, he said. You have hidden lies beneath our name for too long. Do you understand what you risk? She whispered. I understand it completely. He took the letter from his coat and placed it on the table between them. The truth is not treason. It ends here. Beatrice's face paled, then hardened. You would destroy your own blood for a servant's word. For her courage, he said quietly. For what I should have had long ago. The Duchess turned away, her shoulders stiff. You shame us all. Perhaps, he said, but I would rather live in shame than in falsehood. Clara stood silent, unable to speak. When the Duchess left the room, Adrian turned to her. You must leave the palace tonight. She will not forgive this. And you? She asked softly. I cannot ask you to trust me, he said, but I will find a way to make this right. Where would I go? I have a small estate near the coast. You'll be safe there. I'll send Whitmore with you. She looked at him, seeing exhaustion in his eyes. You mean to face her alone? It is my burden, not yours. Then promise me you will not destroy yourself in the name of duty. He smiled faintly. That is a promise I cannot make. By evening, Whitmore guided Clara through a side gate into the rain. She turned once to look back at the palace, the windows blazing with light, the world she had known fading into distance. In the grand hall above, Beatrice stood at the window watching them go. When Adrian entered, she did not turn. You think you can atone by protecting her, she said quietly, but you forget who you are. I remember exactly who I am, he said, a man who can still choose what is right. She faced him, her voice sharp. You will destroy yourself for this maid. Then let me be destroyed, he said. He walked away before she could answer. 3 days later, Clara stayed hidden in the small cottage near the cliffs, watching the sea through the mist. Whitmore had returned to the palace, leaving her with food and silence. Each day she expected soldiers to arrive. Each night she prayed they would not. Then one morning, hoofbeats echoed along the path. She ran to the door and froze. Adrian dismounted, his cloak heavy with rain. My lord, she whispered, what are you doing here? I had to see you. It's not safe. Nothing is safe anymore, he said. My mother spreads her poison through the court. She says you seduced me to steal my father's secrets. They mean to arrest you. Her face went white. Then you must leave me here. I will not, he said. You will not face this alone. She shook her head. If they find you, you'll lose everything. Perhaps it is time I did. He reached for her hands, but before he could speak again, a rider appeared on the road behind him. It was Whitmore, drenched and breathless. They know where you are, he said. The Duchess has sent men. You must go now, both of you. Adrian turned to Clara. We'll ride to the coast. From there we can sail to France if we must. She stared at him in disbelief. You would leave your life? Your name? Your kingdom? He met her eyes. None of it is worth more than the truth. Thunder rolled above them as they mounted the horses and fled toward the cliffs. The wind tore at their cloaks, the sea roaring beneath them. Behind them, faint through the storm, the bells of Wycliffe Palace began to toll. And far away, in her chamber, Duchess Beatrice watched from the window, her voice a whisper of fury. If he chooses her, he will lose everything. Rain swept across the cliffs in sheets as Adrian and Clara rode through the darkness. The sea wind struck their faces, sharp with salt and fear. The horses stumbled on the uneven ground, their hooves muffled by the mud. Behind them, no torches yet glimmered on the horizon, but they both knew it was only a matter of time before the Duchess's men would follow. At last, they reached a small coastal inn, half hidden behind a grove of trees. Adrian dismounted first and helped Clara down. She could barely stand. Her gown was soaked, her hair clung to her face, and her fingers trembled from the cold. He led her inside. The innkeeper, startled to see strangers at so late an hour, took one look at Adrian's bearing and bowed. 2 rooms? 1, Adrian said quickly. She is under my protection. Clara opened her mouth to protest, but stopped when she saw the strain in his eyes. The innkeeper nodded, showing them to a small chamber at the back. The moment the door closed, Adrian sank into the chair by the hearth, dragging a hand through his wet hair. You should rest, he said quietly. So should you, my lord. He looked up. I told you before. Do not call me that. Then what should I call you? Adrian. She hesitated. That would be improper. After all that has happened, do you still care for propriety? Her lips curved faintly. It's the only armor I have left. He smiled for the first time in days. Then keep it. But let me hear my name from your lips once. Her voice was barely a whisper. Adrian. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if the sound itself eased something heavy within him. They sat in silence, the fire crackling softly. After a while, he spoke again. I sent word to Whitmore. He will come at dawn. When he does, you must leave England. Go to France as planned. You'll be safe there. Clara stared at him. And you? I will return to the palace. She rose sharply. You cannot. Your mother will destroy you. She already has, he said. But if I flee, she will claim I was deceived, that you bewitched me. I cannot let your name bear the blame. She stepped closer. There must be another way. He shook his head. There isn't. The truth must be spoken, even if it costs me everything. Then let me speak it, she said. Let me face them. No, he said firmly. You have suffered enough. Her voice broke. And if they condemn you, what will I have left? He reached out and took her hand. You will have freedom, and you will have my love, whether I live or fall. Her breath caught. You speak of love as if it were so simple. It is the only simple thing left. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and irrevocable. Clara turned away, staring into the fire. I don't know how to answer that. You don't have to. Just believe it. The wind howled outside. For the first time since the storm began, Clara allowed herself to sit beside him. They said nothing more that night. The fire burned low, and when morning came, it found them still sitting together, their hands clasped like 2 people who had found peace in the midst of ruin. When Whitmore arrived, the dawn was pale and grey. He entered the room quietly, bowing to both. Your Highness, I beg you, return to the palace at once. The Duchess has spread her tale far and wide. She says the maid stole royal documents and fled with you under false pretenses. Adrian's expression darkened. Then it is time to tell the court the truth. Whitmore hesitated. If you do, you will lose your title. Then I will lose it, Adrian said. Clara rose. No, you will lose your life among them. I will not let you. He turned to her. You cannot stop me. Then I will go with you. You cannot. I will, she said fiercely. You are not the only one who can face shame. Whitmore sighed. She is right, my lord. If she remains, they will twist the story again. The only way to silence them is to speak together. Adrian met Clara's eyes. So be it. They rode back to Wycliffe Palace that afternoon. The rain had stopped, leaving the sky clear and hard as glass. As they approached the gates, guards stepped aside without question. Word of their arrival spread faster than fire. By the time they reached the great hall, the courtiers had gathered, whispering, curious, waiting for spectacle. At the far end of the hall, Duchess Beatrice stood upon the dais. Her face was pale but composed, her posture regal. You return at last, she said, her voice carrying through the chamber. And you bring your accuser beside you. I bring the truth, Adrian said. She laughed softly. Truth? You speak of it as though it were a child's toy. What truth could this girl possibly possess that would outweigh the word of a royal house? He reached into his coat and drew out the letter. This one. A murmur rippled through the hall. Beatrice's eyes flashed. You dare. I dare, he said, his voice ringing clear. Because I have lived too long beneath silence. This letter was written by my father. It confesses his crime against the Harrow family, against her mother. The crown stole what was not theirs, and called it loyalty. I will not stand upon a throne built by deceit. Gasps filled the air. Some courtiers turned away, others leaned closer, hungry for scandal. Beatrice's voice rose. You would condemn your father's memory, your own bloodline for a servant's claim. I condemn only the lie, he said, and if that destroys my place here, let it. Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. Your Grace, I ask for nothing. Not land, not title, only that my mother's name be cleared. Let her rest in peace. Beatrice's mask cracked for an instant, revealing the fear beneath. If you speak another word, enough, Adrian said. This ends today. He turned to the court. You all have lived under the illusion of perfection, but I will not. I am no longer Prince of Wycliffe. I renounce the title and the privileges that came with it. Let truth be my inheritance. The room erupted. Some shouted in disbelief, others in admiration. The Duchess tried to speak, but her voice was lost beneath the noise. Adrian took Clara's hand. Come, he said quietly. We are done here. They walked past the courtiers, past the stunned faces, past the echoes of their own courage. No one stopped them. Outside the palace doors, the sky broke open with sunlight. For the first time in years, Adrian breathed freely. It is finished, he said. Clara looked up at him, her eyes bright with tears. You gave up everything. I gave up nothing that was truly mine, he said. I kept my soul. And I kept you. She smiled faintly through her tears. What will become of us now? Whatever we choose, he said. No crown, no title, only truth. They left the palace grounds in silence, walking down the long road toward the village. No guards followed, no voices called after them. The sound of their steps on the stones was the only rhythm that remained of their old life. That evening they reached a small chapel by the river, the same one where the letter had once been hidden. Inside, Adrian knelt before the altar, laying the letter down once more. This is where it belongs, he said, not in the hands of kings, but before God, where lies cannot touch it. Clara knelt beside him. Then let it rest. They rose together, and for a long while they said nothing. The world beyond the chapel was quiet, the air heavy with the promise of change. Adrian took her hands, his expression calm. I meant what I said last night, he told her. I love you, Clara. I loved you from the moment you looked at me without fear. Her voice trembled. You shouldn't have. It has cost you everything. It has given me everything, he said. If love is ruin, then I welcome it. She tried to speak, but he lifted a hand to stop her. You need not answer now. When this storm passes, when the world forgets what we were, perhaps you'll see that nothing can bind us anymore. She looked up at him, her heart full and aching. Adrian, I have spent my whole life serving the pride of others. Perhaps it's time I served my own heart. He smiled. Then you forgive me? For being proud? She asked. For being blind? For all of it? I do, she said simply. And I love you for trying to be better. He drew a breath, relief softening his face. Then whatever comes next, we face it together. They stood there as the last light of day fell through the chapel windows. The water of the river whispered beyond the walls, and for the first time, both felt what freedom truly meant. Whitmore arrived soon after, his expression solemn. The Duchess has left the palace, he said quietly. The court is in disarray. They will not come after you now. Adrian nodded. Then it is done. Whitmore bowed. You have my respect, my lord. Or perhaps I should say, Adrian. Adrian smiled faintly. Keep your loyalty for England, Whitmore. It needs men like you more than I do. The steward turned to Clara. Your mother would have been proud. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She would have thanked you. He inclined his head, then left them to their peace. As night fell, Adrian and Clara walked out of the chapel together, the road before them open and quiet. They spoke little, but their silence was not heavy. It was the silence of two souls who had said all that mattered. At the edge of the hill, he paused and looked back at the faint lights of Wycliffe Palace. It was never truly ours, he said. No, she answered softly. But this moment is. He turned to her, his voice gentle. Clara, will you stay with me now? Not as a servant, but as my equal. She took his hand. There is nowhere else I wish to be. In the distance, the first stars appeared, clear and steady over the sea. Their light shone upon the two figures standing hand in hand, no longer bound by duty or pride, but joined by choice, by love, by truth. And though the world beyond would still whisper their names, neither cared what it said, for their hearts had already chosen their kingdom. The morning was calm at last. The rain that had followed them for days had lifted, leaving the air clear and soft. Adrian and Clara walked along the narrow path that led from the chapel down toward the village. The sky was bright, the scent of the sea sharp and clean. The storm that had begun in the palace was over, though its echoes still lingered in their hearts. Clara carried nothing but a small satchel. The rest of her life had been left behind. Adrian walked beside her, dressed simply, without the insignia of rank. He looked freer, almost younger, though fatigue still shadowed his eyes. When they reached the last bend in the road, he stopped to take one final look at the hills behind them. So this is how it ends, he said quietly. She smiled. No, Adrian, this is how it begins. They made their way to the small coastal village where fishermen mended their nets and children ran barefoot through the sand. The villagers glanced curiously at the pair, but no one recognized a prince stripped of his title, or a maid once shamed by nobility. To them, they were only two travelers seeking a new life. By afternoon, they reached a modest cottage near the cliffs. The stone walls were weathered but strong, the garden overgrown with wild herbs. It belonged to an old woman who, after hearing Adrian's polite request, agreed to let them stay until they could find their footing. When she left them alone, Clara wandered through the tiny rooms, touching the rough wooden table, the cracked window panes, the little hearth that smelled of salt and smoke. It's perfect, she said softly. Adrian leaned against the doorway, watching her. You think so? I think I could breathe here. He smiled faintly. Then we'll stay until breathing becomes easy. They worked together to clean the cottage. By evening, the floor was swept, the hearth lit, and the air warm again. Adrian found a bottle of cider left behind and poured 2 cups. They sat by the fire as the sun disappeared into the sea, the light turning gold against the walls. Do you miss it? She asked after a while. The palace? He shook his head. I thought I would. But when I look back, I see only walls. Every stone there was heavy with silence. Here, there's air, there's truth. She turned toward him. And me? He met her gaze. You are the truth I found. The words hung between them, simple and absolute. For the first time since the night she defied him in the gallery, Clara allowed herself to smile without fear. You have changed, she said. So have you. Perhaps we've both finally become ourselves. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle. Clara, will you let me build a life with you? Not as a prince trying to make amends, but as a man who wishes to earn your heart every day. She hesitated only a moment before answering. You already have. Outside, the waves crashed softly against the shore, a rhythm steady and ancient. Adrian drew her closer, not with command, but with care. She rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his heartbeat beneath his shirt. Neither spoke for a long while. The silence between them was full, not empty, not fearful, but alive. Days passed quietly. Adrian helped the fishermen with their nets, and Clara worked in the village school, teaching children to read. They were ordinary people now, and the simplicity of it healed them. Sometimes at dusk, they would walk along the cliffs together. He would tell her stories of his childhood, how lonely the palace had been, how duty had pressed on him like a chain. She would tell him of her mother's laughter, of the garden they once had, of the promise that someday the truth would set her free. One evening, as they stood watching the sunset, Adrian said, Do you ever regret what we lost? She turned to him. No, because what we lost was never really ours. What we have now is real. He nodded slowly. Then I will never regret it either. As the months went by, news from the world beyond Wycliffe grew faint. Whitmore wrote once to say that the court had settled in uneasy peace, that Beatrice had withdrawn from public life, and that whispers of Adrian's rebellion had already become legend. "They call you the Prince of Conscience," the letter said, "and her, the Maid of Truth." Adrian laughed when Clara read it aloud. "So we are legends now? Only in stories," she said. "And stories are kinder than memory." "Then let them tell whatever they wish," he said, kissing her hand. "We'll write our own ending." Winter came softly that year. The sea turned steel gray, and the air grew sharp with frost. Yet their cottage remained warm. Clara sang while she worked, her voice light and clear, filling the small rooms with peace. Adrian built a fence around the garden, repaired the roof, and sometimes stood by the window, watching her move with quiet wonder. One night after supper, he laid his cup aside and looked at her across the firelight. "Clara, I've been thinking." "About what?" "About forever." She raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a thought." "I mean it," he said seriously. "We've been given a second chance. I don't want to waste it. I want to make it something lasting." She studied his face. The sincerity there, the steadiness. "You mean marriage?" He nodded. "I mean standing beside you every day of my life, however long that may be. Not as a prince, not as a master, but as your husband. Will you have me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I never thought I'd hear those words from you, nor I from myself," he said softly. "But they're the truest words I've ever spoken." She laughed through her tears. "Then yes, Adrian. 1,000 times yes." He took her hands and kissed them, and for a moment neither could speak. The fire cracked, the wind whispered outside, and the world seemed to hold its breath around them. Their wedding was held a week later, in the same chapel where they had laid down the letter. There were no nobles, no jewels, no courtiers, only the old village priest, Whitmore as witness, and the sound of the sea beyond the open door. Clara wore a simple white dress, one she had sewn herself, and carried a handful of wildflowers gathered from the cliffs. Adrian wore a plain coat, his hair wind-tossed, his face alight with quiet joy. When the priest asked the ancient question, Adrian's answer came without hesitation. "With all that I am." Clara's voice trembled, but her eyes never left his. "And all that I have," she said. When it was done, and they stepped outside, sunlight broke through the clouds, falling across their joined hands. Whitmore smiled as he watched them. "Your mother would have been proud," he said to Clara. "She is," Clara replied softly. "I can feel it." Adrian turned to the sea, the wind tugging at his coat. "This is our kingdom now," he said. "No walls, no crowns, only sky and truth." Clara slipped her arm through his. "And love," he smiled. "And love." They walked together down the cliff path, laughter following them like music. The villagers waved as they passed, some throwing petals, others simply smiling at the sight. It was a small procession, but to them it felt like the triumph of a lifetime. That evening they returned to their cottage. The fire was warm, and the stars were beginning to appear outside the window. Clara stood by the hearth, her hand resting lightly on the table where their rings glimmered in the light. Adrian came to her side and touched her shoulder. "Are you happy?" he asked. She turned to him. "Happier than I have ever been." He brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "I used to think power was the measure of a man. But it's this quiet, this peace, that makes life whole." She looked up at him. "And I used to think courage meant defying others. But it's loving without fear that takes the most courage of all." He smiled, his voice soft. "Then you are the bravest soul I've ever known." She laughed gently. "I was only brave because you were watching." He kissed her forehead. "Then let me keep watching for the rest of my life." They stood together in the firelight, the world outside fading into darkness. The sea murmured its endless song, and the wind carried it through the open window like a blessing. Later, when they stepped outside, the night sky stretched above them, vast and filled with stars. The village was quiet, the waves breaking softly against the rocks below. Clara leaned against Adrian's shoulder, her hand resting over his heart. "Do you ever wonder what they'll say of us in years to come?" she asked. He smiled. "Perhaps they'll say a prince once gave up his crown for love, and a maid once taught him how to live," she added. He looked down at her. "Then they will know the truth." "The truth," she echoed. and nothing less. They fell silent again, listening to the sea. Somewhere far away, a church bell tolled, slow and steady. Adrian turned to her, his expression soft. "Clara, there's something I want you to promise me." "What is it?" "That no matter what happens, you'll never hide your eyes again. The world may bow to power, but I will always bow to the courage that lives in yours." Her voice trembled with emotion. "You once said looking at you was defiance." He smiled. "Now it is devotion." She laughed softly. "Then I will never look away again." He drew her closer, and together they stood beneath the stars, the sea stretching endlessly before them. The wind swept around them, carrying the scent of salt and promise. As dawn began to rise over the horizon, the first light touched their faces, painting them in gold. Clara turned toward him, her eyes shining. "Adrian," she said quietly, "do you think love can truly change the world?" He nodded. "It already has." She smiled through her tears. "Then let it never end." He took her hands, kissed them once more, and whispered, "Never." Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.